Lena Stone has lived in Lynchburg, Virginia her entire life. Recently, she worked as a server for Charlie's Restaurant and Catering for 7 years. But she has been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic and is transitioning. Though that's not her whole story. You're listening to Echoes, a podcast that highlights the important moments in people's lives. And I'm your host, Paris Lape. Echoes is sponsored by warm weather, the type of weather that keeps humans motivated and happy. A good time for all of those under the sun, including plants and animals. Lena, at 25 years old, has gone through a tremendous amount of grief that nobody so young should have to experience. However, she's learned a lot from it. Here is Lena's story.
Drugs are bad. We kind of, as a society, for the most part, have collectively agreed that that is true. Growing up, I was not really exposed to drugs. I was homeschooled. The most connection I have as a point of reference was when I was a teenager. My older brother got into drugs, and he would take pretty much anything, like prescription drugs, random illegal drugs, just, like he was part of that crowd. And he went to public school and private school and, got kicked out of both places for drug use. He would steal from my family money or things to sell for drugs, and he would be very sporadic in his mood and behavior. And I was mostly unaffected at the time. Like, I didn't even realize that the behavioral changes that he would make would have anything to do with drugs or anything like that. I just, was like, okay, sometimes my brother is like really nice to me and wants to talk to me, and sometimes he wants to yell at me, and it was just weird, and I just kind of took it for what it was. My parents put him in rehab twice to get off of drugs, and both times he got kicked out for smuggling drugs in. I got to the point where my immediate family, like my siblings and my parents, told my brother, we love you, but we can't enable you anymore. And, my parents kicked him out of the house, and, were just like, if you get yourself together, then you can come back. And honestly, I just felt like I didn't have a brother anymore. I didn't expect him to actually recover. But after, I think it was about 2 years, he just had an epiphany, and he got his life together, came to God, and just is one of the sweetest people that you'll ever meet now. And he has had a couple relapses at times, but for overall, he's just consistently been doing well. So about a year ago, I started dating Ryan, and Ryan was very honest about previously doing drugs and being addicted to drugs. And he had gone to prison for 2 years for selling drugs. And he, in prison, had come to God and was on fire for the Lord, and, was just constantly reading and praying and learning. And when he came out of prison, he really felt led to go to school in Florida. The name of the college is blanking on me right now, but it's a Bible college in Florida. It was like a 1-year thing, and he was funded to go there, and he went there. And it was around that time that we reconnected, because we had known each other from homeschool events and things when we were younger. And we started talking, and we started dating, and I called my brother to talk to him about the relationship, and my brother, told me, as someone who had been part of the drug scene, that like when someone is addicted to drugs, even when they come clean, like that underlying addiction is always there, and there's always the chance of a relapse no matter how many years you go without. And that if I was going to date someone that had that history, that was just something that I would have to be prepared for. So, I took that little nugget and I put it in the back of my brain. When Ryan and I first started dating, he was passionate, he was excited, he was happy, he was doing so well. We obviously were doing long distance dating because he was living in Florida at school. But we would video chat every night for usually like 2 hours and just talking about life and God and everything. And it was just a really good time. And then he got out of school and he sort of moved back to Lynchburg, but then was like kind of going back and forth between Lynchburg and Connecticut for his job. And I had to go to the camp that I work at in the summer. And so we had less time to talk to each other, and we did. It was very briefly. And then I got out of camp and came back to Lynchburg. And so he would visit for about 2 weeks at a time before going back to Connecticut for 2 or 3 weeks. And there was just a change in him ever since he left school, where, a lot of times it just felt like he was in a different mental place. And there was a dynamic shift in our relationship where I didn't feel like I could talk to him about what was bothering him. I felt weird bringing it up. And there was one point where we had a conversation about something that initially he had been passionate about, but then when I brought it back up, he just was disinterested in not feeling like making those changes in his life that he had said that he wanted to before. So we had a long talk, and I just told him that I didn't feel like he was pursuing his relationship with God, and I had made a promise to God and to myself that I wasn't going to put my faith aside for a guy. So we broke up, and we were broken up for about 3 days, and then we talked again, and he said that he was willing to make the changes in his life and that he wanted to do it for him because that was important to both of us, because, obviously making changes for a significant other for your personal life is really not gonna go anywhere because you have to make it for yourself. And so he was serious about making those changes, but when we were spending time together, and some days it seemed like he was fully there and engaging, and then other days he just seemed like there was a cloud over him and he was just really tired or whatever, and I didn't feel like I could ask him what was wrong, or if I brought it up then he would just say that he was tired. And so he went back to Connecticut that weekend, and we had decided that when he was in Connecticut that we were going to dedicate one night a week to have a video chat like we used to, even though he was busy with work, so he couldn't as often. And so that Monday I was texting him and it's like, hey, when do you want to plan our next video chat? And he said, how about Wednesday night? And I said, that sounds great. And then that night I felt really weird. I really missed him a lot, and I wasn't sure why I was feeling so strongly about it when I'd just seen him 3 days before. And I texted him and I said, like, hey, like, what are you up to? And he didn't respond, and I was like, okay, well, he's probably busy doing something, and that's fine. And I just watched a movie, but I just felt really weird and kind of out of it. But I went to bed, and then the next day I ran errands, I went to work, and just in the background it was just this weird thing that I just kind of pushed aside because I felt like I was just being paranoid or weird. And when I was working and I was thinking about how, if I checked my phone and Ryan hadn't messaged me back at that point, then I was going to message him and ask, are you still alive? But it was going to be a joke because, of course, he was still going to be alive. But at the end of my shift, when I went and checked my phone, he hadn't gotten back to me, but his mother had called me. And she told me to call her back. And so I called her back. And she said, Lena, Ryan died last night. The way my brain processed, like in those moments, it's the stupidest thing, but I just said, he did? Like I need a, confirmation when it was not expected in any way, shape, or form. Like when I had talked to him last, he seemed happy and enthusiastic, and he overdosed on what we originally thought was heroin, but when they finally got the testing back, it was, I can't even think right now. It was fentanyl. And it was like the smallest amount, but it killed him. And I don't think that he meant to die, and I don't know what was going through his head, but probably it was one of those like, oh, maybe just one last time and then stop. I don't know, but he made that decision. And it's just really weird to me because like I never expected to be in that position. But what bothers me is that, a lot of people who think of people overdosing on drugs just think that, those people were just drug addicts and that was their whole life and that, there was nothing else. But there was so much more to Ryan than that. And he had ambition and he had goals and, and just one decision like changed that. But, what it comes down to is drugs are bad.
Thank you for listening to Echoes, a podcast created and edited by me, Paris Lape. Music found on purpleplanet.com. If you have a story you'd like to share, contact me.